You're collecting information like it's going to save you. It won't. The smartest people I know aren't the ones who read the most. They're the ones who stopped lying to themselves first. This isn't another video about thinking faster or memorizing more. That's not what makes someone dangerous. What makes someone dangerous is when they see what everyone else is too comfortable to look at, when they ask the questions everyone else is too afraid to answer, when they stop protecting their ego and start protecting their time. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you lessons that most people spend decades avoiding. They're not complicated, they're just uncomfortable. And that's exactly why they work. Being smart has almost nothing to do with intelligence, at least not the way most people think about it. You probably know someone who's brilliant on paper, high grades, quick with facts, impressive vocabulary. And yet they keep making the same mistakes, keep ending up in the same situations, wondering why nothing changes. Here's what's actually happening. Their brain is working fine, but their honesty isn't. The real definition of dangerous intelligence has nothing to do with what you know. It's about what you're willing to admit. It's about looking at your own patterns, your own excuses, your own comfortable lies, and calling them what they are. Your brain is a suggestion engine, not a truth machine. It generates thoughts, most of which are designed to keep you safe, not to keep you accurate. And your ego? Your ego is the bouncer that decides which thoughts get through to your conscious mind. It filters out anything that might make you uncomfortable, anything that might require you to change. So you end up knowing the right answer and doing the wrong thing anyway. You end up with a library of wisdom you never actually use. Your IQ doesn't matter if your ego keeps vetoing your intelligence. I spent years in that trap, reading books about productivity while procrastinating, studying relationship advice while repeating the same mistakes. I had information. What I didn't have was the ruthlessness to apply it to myself. Dangerously smart isn't about what you know. It's about what you're willing to see. And the first place your ego fights hardest? The smallest word in the English language. You know that tight feeling in your stomach when you agree to something you don't want to do? That little twist that happens right after you say yes, but before the other person even finishes thanking you? That's not anxiety. That's your wisdom trying to override your politeness. And politeness keeps winning. We've been trained to think that being a good person means being available, that being helpful means saying yes, that our value comes from how useful we are to everyone around us. This is how you become helpful to everyone except yourself. Here's what took me way too long to figure out about the word no. It's not a wall you're putting up. It's a filter. It's the difference between spending your energy on what actually matters and spreading yourself so thin that nothing gets your real attention. Every yes you don't mean is a no to yourself. Every time you agree to something that drains you, you're declining something that could fill you up. The math doesn't lie. You have a fixed amount of time and energy. Spending it on obligations you resent means you can't spend it on work you love, people you cherish, or rest you need. The smartest people I know have learned something most people never figure out. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be generous and still protect your peace. You can care about others without abandoning yourself in the process. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to say it without a lengthy explanation. You're allowed to protect your peace like it's your most valuable possession because honestly, it is. But there's something that makes us say yes when we mean no. Something disguising itself as wisdom. Something that feels like it's protecting us when it's actually holding us hostage. We need to talk about fear. Fear is wearing a disguise, and it's very good at costumes. Sometimes it shows up dressed as preparation. I'm not avoiding it, I'm just not ready yet. Sometimes it wears the mask of practicality. I'm being realistic about my limitations. Sometimes it poses as timing. Now just isn't the right moment. But underneath every costume, it's the same thing. Fear, pretending to be wisdom. You know that 3 a.m. feeling when your brain decides to run disaster simulations? When you're lying in bed and suddenly you're thinking about every possible way something could go wrong. Your mind treats those scenarios like they're prophecies. Like thinking about failure means failure is coming. Here's what your brain doesn't understand. It can't tell the difference between a threat and an opportunity. To your nervous system, asking for a raise and being chased by a predator produce almost identical responses. Your biology is outdated, and it thinks any uncertainty is danger. That's not wisdom. That's an evolutionary glitch, and it's your job to override it. I let fear make my decisions for years. I called it being careful, being smart, waiting for the right moment. What I was actually doing was building a life designed to avoid discomfort. And that life was incredibly comfortable but it was also incredibly small. The fear will tell you to wait, tell you you're not ready, and it will give you 100 logical reasons why now isn't the time. And it will be lying every single time. We'll rehearse a confrontation 17 times in the shower and then say nothing in real life. We'll imagine worst-case scenarios in vivid detail and then act like that imagination is research. Fear dressed up as logic is still fear, and the only way through it is to act while you're still afraid. So if fear isn't protecting you, what about failure? What if everything you've been taught about failure is wrong too? I've failed at so many things, I've basically got a PhD in it at this point. Turns out that's more useful than most actual PhDs. We're taught to avoid failure like it's a permanent stain. Like messing up once means you're marked forever. Like the people who succeed are the ones who never fell down. That's not just wrong, it's backwards. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the tuition. It's the fee you pay for learning something that actually sticks. You can read about riding a bike for years, but you won't learn until you fall off a few times. Knowledge comes from books. Wisdom comes from scars. The most successful people I know have a different relationship with failure than everyone else. They don't see it as a verdict on their worth. They see it as data, information about what doesn't work, feedback that gets them closer to what does. Here's the mindset shift that actually matters. Treat your life like an experiment. Scientists don't cry when an experiment fails. They write down what happened and try something different, expecting most attempts to fail. That's not pessimism. That's just how discovery works. The only rule is this: make new mistakes. Repeating the same mistake isn't experimentation, it's stubbornness. But making fresh mistakes, that's called learning. The only people who never fail are the ones who never show up. They're the ones who stay on the sidelines, keeping their record clean while their potential stays locked in their imagination. Their fear of failure becomes the biggest failure of all. Stop beating yourself up for falling down and start asking what the fall taught you. But here's where it gets deeper. Failure hurts because of what we make it mean, and that meaning is entirely your construction. What if I told you that nothing that's ever happened to you was good or bad? I know how that sounds. Stay with me. The event is neutral always. What hurts, what helps, what defines you isn't what happened. It's the story you told yourself about what happened, the interpretation you chose, usually without realizing you were choosing. Two people lose the same job. One spirals into depression, convinced it proves they were never good enough. The other treats it as a forced redirect, an opportunity to pursue something they'd been too comfortable to try. Same event. Completely different lives afterward. The event didn't break you. Your interpretation did. This isn't about toxic positivity. I'm not telling you to slap a smiley face on your pain and pretend everything is fine. Some things hurt, and some things should hurt. Join our YouTube membership and get exclusive perks like early access to scripts, input on future topics about productivity, and connect with a like-minded community that gets it. Click join below and let's build your easier, more intentional life together. But there's a difference between feeling pain and creating suffering. Pain is what happens. Suffering is what you add by fighting against reality, by telling yourself it shouldn't have happened, by replaying it on loop while adding commentary about what it means about you. I had a moment years ago when I realized I'd been interpreting a specific failure as proof that I wasn't meant for more. That story ran in the background of my mind for years, influenced decisions I didn't even know I was making. And it was just a story. One interpretation I'd grabbed onto because it was easier than examining what really happened. When you understand that you're the one assigning meaning, you get your power back. You can look at your past and choose different interpretations, look at your present, and decide what things mean before your autopilot decides for you. This is where gratitude actually becomes useful. Not as a feel-good exercise, but as a practice in choosing interpretation. When you list what you're grateful for, you're training your mind to look for a certain kind of meaning. Accept pain fully when it comes, because resistance only makes it stay longer. But don't let your interpretations run on autopilot. You're the author, so start writing consciously. Once you control meaning, you start seeing what everyone else misses. You start thinking like no one else. Here's a test. When was the last time you disagreed with everyone around you out loud? Not in your head where it's safe, out loud where it costs something. Most people think being open-minded means considering all perspectives. In practice, it usually means agreeing with whatever the room agrees with and calling it thoughtfulness. Agreeing with everyone is intellectual laziness disguised as open-mindedness. Think about how crowds actually work. Everyone's looking at everyone else to figure out what to think. Each person assumes the others know something they don't, so everyone follows everyone, and nobody leads. That's how entire groups end up walking in the wrong direction with complete confidence. Dangerously smart people have a different default. They don't assume the popular answer is correct. They ask why the popular answer became popular. They look for the incentives, the blind spots, the lazy thinking that got repeated until it felt true. Here's a question that will make your life more interesting. Instead of asking why, start asking why not. Why not try the approach everyone said wouldn't work? Why not question the rule everyone follows but nobody can explain? Everyone agrees the meeting could have been an email. Nobody sends the email. Everyone agrees most of what we worry about never happens. Everyone keeps worrying anyway. The gap between what people claim to believe and what they actually do is where all the opportunity lives. But here's the twist. The most important thing to question is your own thinking. Question your intelligence daily, because the moment you feel certain you're right is usually the moment you need the most skepticism. Thinking differently is step one. But dangerously smart people don't just think different thoughts. They ask different questions. Most problems don't need better answers. They need better questions. Think about the last time you felt stuck. Chances are you were asking something like, why does this always happen to me? Or why can't I figure this out? Those questions aren't designed to produce solutions. They're designed to produce self-pity. The quality of your life equals the quality of the questions you ask. Bad questions lead you in circles. Why am I so bad at this? That's not a question. That's self-criticism wearing a question mark. Compare it to what would I need to learn to get better at this? Same situation, completely different direction. Most problems aren't solved. They're dissolved. They disappear when you ask a question that reframes the entire situation. You stop trying to force an answer and instead find an angle where the problem stops being a problem. Here's something counterintuitive. When you're stuck, walk away. Not because you're giving up, but because your subconscious keeps working even when you don't. Some of the best solutions emerge in the shower, on a walk, in that half-asleep moment before you fully wake up. Your brain needs space to connect dots your conscious mind can't see. Adopt a beginner's mind. Pretend you know nothing about the problem and ask the obvious questions that an expert would be too proud to ask. Sometimes the answer's sitting in plain sight, invisible only because everyone assumed it was too simple. I've had more breakthroughs from asking dumb questions than smart ones. My ego hated this discovery, but it kept being true anyway. When you feel stuck, don't search harder for answers. Search for a better question. The right question makes the answer obvious, and the wrong question makes even obvious answers invisible. There is one question that shifts how you see people entirely, including yourself. Think of someone who drives you crazy. Got them? Good. You're about to hate what I'm going to say. The things that irritate you most about other people are usually things you haven't accepted about yourself. The person whose arrogance bothers you. You might be wrestling with your own pride. The friend whose neediness exhausts you. You might be uncomfortable with your own need for connection. The coworker whose dishonesty offends you. There might be some truth you're not telling yourself. We judge people for the exact things we're afraid people see in us. I noticed this right around the time I stopped pretending I didn't do it. Here's an even more uncomfortable truth. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. The relationships in your life are reflections of your own patterns, beliefs, and unresolved stuff. If you keep attracting the same kind of problematic person, the common factor isn't bad luck. It's you. This isn't about blame. It's about power. Once you see relationships as mirrors, you can use them to see yourself more clearly. The people who trigger you are teachers. Annoying, unwelcome teachers, but teachers nonetheless. Communication becomes simpler when you understand this. Most conflicts aren't about the surface issue. They're about the unspoken fears and unmet needs underneath. When you master clear, honest communication, most relationship problems disappear. Not because you solved them, but because you stopped creating them. Listen actively. Even when someone's boring you or frustrating you, people reveal wisdom in unexpected places when you're actually paying attention. Surround yourself with people who lift your energy. Not because you should avoid everyone difficult, but because you become an average of the people you spend the most time with. Choose that average deliberately and stop gossiping. Every time you talk about someone behind their back, you're revealing your own character to whoever's listening. People notice and they wonder what you say about them when they're not around. These relationship truths take time to absorb. And that brings us to the most dangerous lie of all, the one about time itself. Someday isn't a day of the week, and you've been scheduling things there for years. Someday I'll write that book. Someday I'll have that conversation. Someday I'll take care of my health. Someday I'll start living instead of just getting by. Your brain treats the future like an infinite resource. It's not, and somewhere inside you know this. But knowing and acting are different countries that rarely share a border. Here's the time lie in its purest form. You think you have more of it than you do. You think there will be a better moment. You think waiting costs nothing. Every day you postpone something meaningful, you pay a tax you can't see. The tax is paid in missed experiences, in relationships that never deepen, in skills that never develop, in versions of yourself that never get to exist. Remember what we said about fear? Time tells the same lie. It whispers that later is safer, suggests that tomorrow will be easier. And every time you believe it, your life gets a little smaller. I think about the years I can't get back, not with regret exactly, but with clarity. The clearest lesson those years taught me is that the right time was always now. It was now when I was 23, and it's now today. The conditions were never going to be perfect, and I was never going to feel completely ready. The heartache you're avoiding will fade. Time heals that. But the unlived life, the unexpressed love, the untaken chances, those don't heal. Those just haunt. Commit long-term to the things that matter, but start today, not someday, not when you're ready, not when the conditions are right. If you're waiting for the right time, I need you to hear this. You're already in it. So, what will you do with this time? A moment for our sponsor, Get Hired Now. If you're job searching right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The endless tabs, rewriting the same cover letter at midnight, scrolling through job boards, wondering if you're even applying to the right things. It's exhausting, and it eats hours you'll never get back. That's why I wanted to tell you about Get Hired Now from Top Resume. This isn't another resume template or a coaching session. It's a full job placement service where experts handle the grind for you. You get a dedicated specialist who searches for the right roles, tailors your applications, and keeps everything moving forward while you get your time back. And here's the part that matters. You pay one fee, and they stay with you until you land your next job. Not until your package runs out, until you're hired. If you've been telling yourself you'll get serious about the job search someday, this is the push. Stop doing it alone. Go to topresume.com/job-placement. Links in the description. Most people think they're not creative enough to answer that question, but they're wrong. You're creative. I know you don't believe that, but you are. Somewhere along the way, you decided creativity was a talent you either had or didn't. Watched artists and innovators and thought there was something fundamentally different about their brains. There isn't. They just gave themselves permission to be bad before they got good. The biggest enemy of creativity isn't lack of talent, it's premature judgment. You have an idea, and before it even fully forms, you're already shooting it down. That's not critical thinking, that's creative self-sabotage. Here's the truth about generating ideas. You're not stuck, you're just judging too early. Quantity breeds quality. The way to get good ideas is to get lots of ideas and throw away the bad ones. But you can't throw away the bad ones if you never let yourself have them in the first place. Bad ideas are the compost. Good ideas grow in. Your best insight is probably trapped behind about 40 terrible ones. That's just the toll road, and you don't get to skip it. Brainstorm wildly without judgment. Write down the dumb ideas. Voice the obvious suggestions. Let yourself think things that might not work. The filtering comes later. The creating comes first. Here's something else worth knowing. Constraints make you more creative, not less. When everything is possible, nothing is urgent. When you have limited time, limited resources, limited options, your brain starts finding solutions it would never discover in unlimited conditions. Stop waiting for inspiration. Prototype quickly. Try things. Iterate based on what you learn. Creativity isn't a lightning bolt. It's a process of making, evaluating, and making again. You have ideas. You've just been strangling them in the crib. But creativity works best when it comes from a centered place. And that center, you've probably been abandoning it for years. Everyone talks about finding yourself like you're lost somewhere. You're not lost. You've just been leaving yourself behind. Think about how often you abandon yourself. You ignore what you actually want to keep the peace. Say you're fine when you're not. Push through exhaustion because you think that's what strong people do. You betray your own needs so regularly, you barely notice anymore. Finding yourself sounds mystical until you realize it mostly means stopping the constant self-betrayal. Less romantic, more true. You don't need to find yourself. You need to stop abandoning yourself. This isn't about selfishness. It's about integrity. The word integrity means wholeness, being undivided. When you're constantly overriding your own feelings and needs, you become fragmented. You lose touch with what you actually value, what you actually want, who you actually are beneath all the accommodation. Authenticity isn't about being different from everyone else. It's about being consistent with yourself. Your outside matching your inside, saying what you mean and meaning what you say. Find your center first, then solve outward. When you make decisions from a grounded place, everything gets clearer. You stop weighing every option against what other people might think and start weighing them against what actually matters to you. Love yourself first, not in a bubble bath and positive affirmations way, though that's fine too. In a fundamental way, in a you're worthy of your own best effort way, in a you don't need external validation to know your own value way. Celebrate your own brilliance without waiting for someone else to notice it. You know when you've done something well, so trust that knowledge. If any of this is landing, you're probably thinking of someone who needs to hear it too. That instinct is worth trusting. Every insight we've covered is a small truth, but small truths have a surprising amount of power. Everything we've talked about seems like separate lessons. It's not. They're the same lesson, viewed from different angles. Fear and failure connect because both require the same courage to face. Reframing and relationships connect because how you interpret others reflects how you interpret yourself. Creativity and your center connect because authentic expression requires knowing who you are. These aren't random insights, they're one insight with many faces. Wisdom isn't one big realization, it's 1,000 small honests. It's noticing a pattern and admitting it's there, catching yourself in a familiar excuse and choosing differently, making a slightly better decision today than you made yesterday. The compound effect is usually talked about with money or habits. It works the same way with truth. One honest admission doesn't change much, but years of small honests, accumulated and compounded, that shifts everything. That's how someone becomes wise, not through one breakthrough, but through countless tiny choices to see clearly instead of comfortably. It works in reverse too. Compound ignorance is just as real. The lies you tell yourself compound, the patterns you refuse to see compound, the comfortable illusions you maintain compound into a life that looks nothing like what you wanted. Compound interest works for wisdom too. Unfortunately, so does compound ignorance. As mentioned on previous videos, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. You fall to the things you do daily when no one's watching, to the small truths you either face or flee. Prioritize your physical health, not just because it feels good, but because your body is the foundation everything else is built on. A compromised foundation affects every structure above it. Take morality seriously, not because someone's watching, but because integrity compounds into a reputation, a self-image, a life that feels solid. Never stop reading, learning, exposing yourself to new perspectives. Knowledge compounds, so stay hungry. Remember in the beginning when we said intelligence isn't what you think? This is what it actually is. The compound effect of choosing honesty over comfort over and over and over. But there's one more thing dangerously smart people understand. Sometimes knowing what not to do matters more than knowing what to do. You now know what to do, but there's an equally important list: what to never do. Dangerously smart people never confuse intelligence with chronic complaining. Complaining is easy. It gives you something to talk about, makes you feel like you're doing something when you're not. But every minute spent complaining is a minute not spent solving. If something bothers you that much, either endure it silently or change it. The middle ground of constant verbal frustration helps no one, least of all you. Dangerously smart people never let negativity run unchecked. Negativity is seductive because it's easier. Finding problems requires no skill. Anyone can criticize. Anyone can predict doom. It takes actual effort to look for solutions, to find what might work, to maintain hope in the face of difficulty. The negativity path feels realistic, but it's actually just lazy. Dangerously smart people never compare themselves to others, and here's why. You're seeing their highlight reel and comparing it to your behind the scenes, seeing their results without seeing their cost, measuring yourself against a fiction. Track your own growth and compete with your past self. That's the only comparison that produces useful information. Here's the one that traps more people than any other. Dangerously smart people never keep explaining why they're stuck. The fastest way to stay stuck is to keep explaining why you're stuck. Every reason you give yourself for why things are hard becomes a brick in the wall you're building. Every explanation becomes evidence for why change is impossible, and your brain, eager to be right, will keep finding proof for whatever story you're telling. Smart people aren't afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of staying wrong. They're afraid of holding on to a belief past its expiration date, of defending a position just because they've already defended it. Drop the ego. It's the biggest blocker of intelligence there is. The ego doesn't want to learn because learning means admitting you didn't already know. The ego doesn't want to change because change means admitting you were wrong. Kill it before it kills your growth. Now you know what to do and what never to do. There's only one thing left. We started by questioning what intelligence really means. Now you know. It's not information, not processing speed, not knowing the answers. It's ruthless honesty with yourself, applied consistently, compounded over time. You now know what most people spend their whole lives avoiding. You know that fear is lying to you, that failure is teaching you, that your interpretations shape your reality more than your circumstances ever could. You know how to think differently, how to ask better questions, that the people in your life are mirrors reflecting what you need to see. You know that time is not your friend until you make it one. You know you're more creative than you believed, that your center is the only ground worth standing on, how small truths compound, and what to avoid. You have the map. But here's where most people stop. They collect the insights, nod along, feel inspired for an hour, a day, maybe a week, and then they slide back into the same patterns. The gap between knowing and doing is where your entire life is decided. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting while afraid. Knowing that waiting for comfort means waiting forever. It's betting on yourself even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. Bet on yourself boldly. Self-doubt is the real risk. The cost of trying and failing is almost always lower than the cost of not trying at all. Every problem has a solution. When you shift from victim energy to solution energy, answers start appearing that were invisible before. Remember what we said about permission? You never needed it. You just needed to stop waiting for it. The fear will still come. It just won't decide anymore. I'm still learning all of this, by the way, just in case you thought I had it figured out. I absolutely don't. I'm just slightly less confused than I was. Trying to make tomorrow slightly less confusing than today. That's all any of us can do. Keep choosing honesty, keep facing what's uncomfortable, keep compounding the small truths until they build something you're proud of. So here's the only question that matters now. What will you do differently, starting now? And hey, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Also, let me know your thoughts on what I just shared. Oh, and there's more. I've just started a Patreon to help support these videos and connect with you more directly. Check out the link in the description if you'd like to join.